The other skill that's important in 3.6 is understanding how to write combined inequalities. So let's start by just reviewing inequality, or like a simple one. For instance, if I talk about all the numbers on the number line that are greater than 0, I would say x is greater than 0. Notice that when you have the x in front, that the direction that that arrow goes is the same as the way that the inequality goes. If it was filled in over here, we would be talking about greater than or equal to 0. So that's something everybody probably knows already. If it's going the other way, of course, it's less than. So we have now combined inequalities where you get two things going on at the same time. For instance, we have two major types. One, for instance, is like, I don't want to use the 0 again. So let's say from negative 10 to positive 5. And I'll make one of them filled in and one of them not filled in. So if we talk about all the points between negative 10 and positive 5, we could write this as two different things. We could say, oh, we could go from this way from negative 10 and this way from positive 5. If we were to write it like this, we would state it like x is greater than negative 10 and x has got to be less than or equal to positive 5. That would be an acceptable way of writing that. Another way of writing it would be to say negative 10 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 5, which is a little more compact, but it means the same thing. It's the combined inequality, or the combination of the two things. If you're going to use interval notation, I think we might have looked at earlier in the year, interval notation, if you're using that, would look like this, where you have a square brace around 5 because it's equal there, and around negative 10 you have just a regular parenthesis. So it's important to be able to know what an and is. An and statement is where you're combining all the numbers greater than negative 10, but they also have to be less than or equal to positive 5. Another type that we've had in class with the parabola systems that we've had. How do I keep on writing a 0? I don't know, but let's try something a little more interesting. Number. So let's say number negative 2, and this is positive 3. And let's talk about all the numbers going this way from negative 2 and this way from positive 3. In this case, we have the left side or the right side. So we would have to talk about it as x is less than negative 2 or x is greater than positive 3. This describes all the ones going to the left, and notice again that this thing matches over here, and all the things going to the right, which is this one over here. So it's important to write the word or, because that describes that all of the things in the left and the right side are solutions. So this is the way to write these inequalities once you know what they are. What we did in class and what I gave in notes or when you had a quadratic that you can either factor or use the quadratic formula, and you end up with 2 points that you, just as a review, 2 points that you have to decide whether it's inside or outside the region. So for instance, if x plus 3 times x plus 7 is less than or equal to 0, that means that negative 3 and negative 7 are important numbers because negative 3 makes the first part 0, negative 7 makes the second part 0. I know that they're filled in dots at both of these things. And I have to figure out whether the region between negative 7 and negative 3 is the answer, or the numbers left of negative 7 and right of negative 3 are the answers. So to do that, I usually pick a point, and you can pick a point inside the region or outside the region. It doesn't matter. I usually try to pick 0, which happens to be outside the region. If 0 makes a true statement when I plug it in for x, that means that everything on the two outsides works. That means that everything on the two outsides gets filled in. If 0 creates a false statement that when you plug it in for x, that means that the inside between negative 7 and negative 3 work in this equation. So we can plug in 0 and see what happens. 0 plus 3 times 0 plus 7. That would be 3 times 7 is 21. Well, we know that 21 is not less than 0. So that means that the outside doesn't work, which means that the inside must work. So the answer in this one, negative 7 is less than x, which is less than negative 3. That's how we do these problems. If you can't factor it, sometimes you have to use the quadratic formula. So if you have a quadratic formula problem and you end up with something like, I don't know, -2 plus and minus the square root of 3 all over 8, you're going to have the same situation. -2 minus the square root of 3 over 8. And somewhere to the right of that is -2 plus the square root of 3 over 8. And I don't know what this would have been, but you would try to figure out where 0 is on this one. Or maybe some other convenient number. Or maybe you just want to use positive 100 in the original equation, whatever that is, because that's way to the right. But, when I look at something like this, I say to myself, -2 plus the square root of 3, -2 plus, I know the square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 3 must be a little less than that. Therefore, -2 plus a little bit less than 2 is still going to be negative divided by a positive number, which means that the rightmost number here is going to be less than 0. That means my 0 point is outside the region. It's not inside. So I'm just saying that's there's some ways of thinking about these types of inequalities that will make some sense. Or you can use a calculator and figure it out that way.